What if the patterns you can't break aren't yours to begin with? Maybe you've done the inner work, therapy, energy healing, meditation, and yet some patterns just won't budge. Relationships that drain you, roles you can't walk away from, guilt that makes no sense. It's like something invisible is tying you to a loop you never agreed to. But what if you did agree? Just not here, and not as the version of you watching this right now. Can you really be bound by a soul-level agreement made by another version of you? Maybe in a past life, a parallel timeline, or even through a moment of deep emotion you don't consciously remember. More importantly, can you break that agreement? In this video, we're going to explore exactly that. You'll learn how to recognize and release soul contracts you didn't knowingly make, but are still living under. These are the contracts that shape our patterns, pull our energy, and keep us tied to roles, people, or emotional weight long after their purpose has passed. Let's get into it. Soul contracts are energetic agreements made at the level of the soul, before or beyond our conscious awareness. They aren't legal documents, and they don't come with terms and conditions we can scroll through. They are more like invisible blueprints, shaping our life experiences, lessons, and relationships from behind the scenes. Most commonly, these agreements are formed during pre-birth planning. Before incarnating, your soul may have chosen certain people, events, or challenges to help you grow spiritually, clear karma, or fulfill a mission. This is where you might choose to meet a soulmate, go through a difficult family dynamic, or even experience failure because your soul believed it would ultimately evolve you. But soul contracts aren't only formed before birth. Some are created within this life, especially in emotionally intense moments. For example, a child might subconsciously make a vow like, "I'll always protect Mom," during a traumatic experience. That inner promise can lock in as an energetic contract, quietly directing their decisions even decades later. Then there are contracts formed by other versions of you, your parallel selves. These exist in alternate timelines or dimensions where you made different choices. Because all versions of you are energetically connected, a contract formed by one can echo through the others. You might carry the emotional or energetic residue of a choice you never remember making, because you, in another version of reality, made it. That's why some patterns feel foreign but familiar, like you're caught in something that doesn't quite belong to your current life story. It's important to note, this video isn't about identifying contracts. If you're here, chances are you've already sensed them. You know something unseen is influencing your energy. What we're focusing on today is how to dissolve those contracts, especially the ones that no longer serve your path, but still hold power over your present. These contracts may have been useful once. They may have protected you, taught you, or connected you. But when their time is up, holding onto them becomes more of a weight than a wisdom. And the good news? You can release them consciously, compassionately, and without fear. The next step is understanding why some of them stay hidden in the first place. So, if these contracts are influencing us, why can't we always see them? The answer lies in their nature. Soul contracts are energetic, not mental. They live in the field of frequency, not logic. That's why you usually can't remember making them, especially if they came from a past life, another timeline, or a moment of emotional overwhelm. You don't need to consciously recall them for them to still be active. These contracts often stay hidden because they aren't stored like memories. Instead, they show up as energetic signatures, patterns that repeat without explanation. For example, you might feel unexplainably loyal to someone even when the relationship is toxic or long over. Or you carry an emotional burden like shame, fear, or responsibility that doesn't match your lived experience. You've done the healing, the therapy, the inner work, but the pattern keeps looping. Other times you feel an intense pull toward or away from certain people or places with no logical reason. These reactions might not make sense to the mind, but they make perfect sense to the soul. That's because contracts operate through resonance, not reasoning. And when a contract is still active, your field will continue to vibrate at the frequency that matches it. This is especially true when the contract comes from a parallel self. In another version of reality, a different you may have made an agreement that created a strong energetic imprint. Because you and that version are quantumly entangled, connected through a shared soul field, you may carry the weight of something you never personally chose. Think of it like tuning forks. If one fork is vibrating, it can cause another nearby to hum at the same frequency, even if they're in different rooms. Soul contracts work similarly. They don't need your permission to stay active, only your resonance. And because these patterns often blend with our personality, upbringing, or past traumas, we mistake them as part of who we are. But they're not. They're agreements, and agreements can be changed. The challenge is that many of us don't question them. We assume the exhaustion, the guilt, the stuckness is just life. But what if it isn't? Recognizing that you're operating under an unconscious contract isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're waking up. And that brings us to an important truth. Breaking a soul contract is not a betrayal. In fact, it may be the most loyal act your soul can make to your own evolution. If realizing you're living under a soul contract is a wake-up call, then choosing to break it is often met with inner resistance, usually dressed up as guilt, fear, or confusion. That's because many of us were conditioned to equate loyalty with spiritual integrity. We think, if I leave this role, this person, this dynamic, am I abandoning my path? But here's the truth. Breaking a soul contract isn't a betrayal. It's an evolution. Contracts are not life sentences. Many are designed to be temporary, tied to a specific lesson, phase, or frequency. Once that lesson is integrated, the contract loses its purpose. But if we keep holding on out of fear, guilt, or a sense of duty, we begin to stagnate. Our energy dims. Our path narrows. And ironically, we start betraying ourselves. Let's reframe this. Ending a soul contract can be the completion of the agreement, not a failure to uphold it. It's like graduating from a grade in school. You don't stay in third grade forever because you were once meant to be there. You grow, you evolve, and eventually it's time to move forward. And sometimes the growth doesn't come from staying, but from leaving with love. Some contracts were formed in a lower frequency, born from trauma, fear, or scarcity. Others were formed in love, but have since become misaligned with your current self. Either way, holding on to them out of obligation can create resentment, fatigue, or spiritual inertia. This is especially true for people who identify as healers, empaths, or caretakers. If you've taken on roles where your worth is tied to saving others or carrying their pain, breaking the contract can feel like abandonment. But ask yourself, who is being abandoned when you stay? Them or you? When you break a soul contract, you're not just freeing yourself. You're also releasing the other person or energy from a pattern that may be holding them back too. You're giving both souls permission to evolve beyond the terms of an outdated agreement. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need permission to free yourself. The moment you recognize that the contract has served its purpose, you're already standing at the doorway of release. So how do you know when you've reached that point? How do you know when a soul contract is ready to dissolve? Sometimes the signs are subtle. Other times they feel like a full-body truth you can't ignore anymore. One of the clearest indicators is that you feel trapped in a pattern, even after doing the work. You've reflected, meditated, healed, and grown. But the loop continues. It's as if no matter how far you climb, something keeps pulling you back to the same emotional landscape. This isn't failure, it's feedback. It's your soul saying, you've completed the lesson, but the contract is still running in the background. Another powerful sign, you feel guilty for wanting to move on. Whether it's from a relationship, a responsibility, or a role, part of you knows it's time to let go, but another part feels indebted. That emotional tug of war is often a sign that an energetic agreement is still anchoring you, even if your mind has moved on. You might also notice a kind of energetic fatigue around certain identities. A specific job title, family role, or even personality trait starts to feel heavy or unnatural. You no longer resonate with it, but breaking free feels wrong. That dissonance is your frequency outgrowing an outdated contract. And then there are the intuitive nudges, dreams, flashes, or feelings that something deeper is at play. You may not be able to explain it, but you sense there's an invisible thread keeping you tied to someone or something that's no longer aligned. This is especially true when contracts involve karmic entanglement across lifetimes or timelines. You might feel the echo of pain, responsibility, or love that didn't originate here, but still lingers, as if waiting for closure. Here's the truth. These are not signs of weakness or spiritual confusion. They're signals of readiness. Your energy is shifting. Your soul is preparing for expansion. And the discomfort you feel isn't a warning to stay. It's an invitation to release. You don't have to wait for total clarity to begin. The desire for freedom is often the first evidence that you're ready to reclaim it. Now that you can recognize the signs, let's get clear on what kind of contract you might be dealing with. Because not all contracts are created equal, and knowing the type can help you break it with greater precision and power. Let's look at 3 core types: inherited contracts, shadow contracts, and parallel contracts. While they can overlap, each has its own energetic signature. Inherited contracts. These are passed through bloodlines or soul groups. They often sound like, "We always sacrifice for family," or "It's my job to carry the burden." These contracts are rooted in ancestral survival patterns created generations ago, usually during crisis, war, or trauma. You may unconsciously inherit guilt, fear, or obligation that was never yours. These contracts are rarely verbalized, but you feel them in the way certain roles are silently expected of you. Breaking them doesn't dishonor your lineage, it liberates it. When one person heals the inherited weight, it echoes both backward and forward in the family line. Shadow contracts. These arise from trauma, fear, or internalized shame, usually formed in this life. A child who felt abandoned may contract to never be the one who leaves. A survivor of betrayal may vow to never trust again. These contracts are hidden in the emotional body, often tangled in self-protection. They operate through avoidance, self-sacrifice, or staying small. You might even feel safe in dysfunction because part of you believes it's what you deserve. Shadow contracts dissolve when we choose truth over fear and self-worth over survival. Parallel contracts. These are the most metaphysical and the most misunderstood. A parallel contract is an energetic agreement made by another version of you in a different timeline or dimension. That you might have chosen to stay, sacrifice, or suffer, and because your souls are entangled, you're feeling the ripple effect. You may sense this contract as a weight that doesn't make sense in your current life. It feels foreign, but deeply familiar. These contracts often show up as irrational blocks, unshakable guilt, or fated feeling events. The key is to trust the intuition that says, "This isn't mine, but it's affecting me anyway." These 3 contract types can weave together. For instance, a parallel contract might reinforce a shadow vow, which echoes through your family line. It's all connected. But by naming the kind of contract you're dealing with, you bring it into the light, and anything seen can be shifted. Now that you've identified the kind of soul contract you may be carrying, the next question is, how do you actually break it? This isn't about forcing or fighting. Breaking a soul contract is an energetic disentanglement, and it requires presence, intention, and honesty. Let's walk through a 4-step process that blends metaphysical understanding with practical action. Begin by noticing what keeps repeating. This could be emotional loops, recurring relationship dynamics, or a specific kind of energetic heaviness. Use tools like journaling, dream work, or quiet inner inquiry. Ask yourself, what keeps showing up even though I've done the work? What am I tired of carrying? Patterns are the fingerprints of hidden contracts. The more specific you are, the more power you have to shift them. Name the agreement. Once a pattern becomes clear, put words to the energetic agreement behind it. Speak it out loud. This might sound like, I agreed to carry my mother's grief. I agreed to never feel safe. I agreed to stay small so others could shine. Naming the contract externalizes it. It separates you from the agreement. You are not the vow. You are the soul choosing whether to keep it. Revoke with intention. This is where the energetic break happens. Speak a revocation aloud from your center. For example, I now revoke any soul contract made by any version of me, past, present, or parallel, that no longer serves my highest path. I release all agreements bound by guilt, fear, duty, or unconscious loyalty. I reclaim my energy now. You don't need to feel dramatic. You just need to be clear. Your voice is vibration. Let it carry your truth into the field. Replace with a new frequency. Nature abhors a vacuum. Once you break an old contract, fill that space with your new choice. Declare what you're now available for. I choose freedom. I align with joy. I stand in my sovereignty. Visualize the old contract dissolving like smoke and your energy field expanding. Feel into the new reality as if it's already here. Optional tools to support this process. Write the contract and burn it, or meditate with your spirit guides or higher self. Breaking a soul contract is not a one-time ritual, it's a reclamation. But once done with clarity, the energetic ripple is immediate. So what happens after you break a soul contract? Let's prepare for what comes next. Now, you've revoked the contract. You've reclaimed your energy. What now? Sometimes the first thing you'll notice is a void, a strange stillness, even emptiness. That's because you've just removed an energetic structure your system was used to running, possibly for years, lifetimes, or even across timelines. It's like pulling out an old operating system. There's a pause before the new one fully takes hold. This is completely normal. Don't rush to fill the space. Let the void breathe. Let your field recalibrate. You might experience emotional waves, grief, relief, or even anger. You may also receive insights through dreams, body sensations, or synchronicities. These are signs that your system is processing and releasing residual energy tied to the contract. It's not chaos, it's detox. Energetically, you may begin to feel lighter around certain people, places, or memories. You might even lose interest in roles or relationships that once felt central. That's because the cord is no longer active. The contract is no longer defining your vibration. And here's something profound. When you break a soul contract, especially a parallel or inherited one, you often shift other versions of yourself too. Your frequency update sends a ripple through timelines and bloodlines. You're not just healing your own life, you're realigning your entire soul field. But remember, this is a process, not a performance. Stay gentle with yourself. Let the new frequency guide your next steps. You don't have to know what's next. You just have to stay in tune. As you move forward, continue to check in with your energy. What feels free? What still feels bound? You now have the tools to shift what no longer serves. Because the truth is, you were never meant to stay in bondage to an old agreement. You were meant to remember who you are and choose again. And now you have. If this resonated, like and share it with someone who needs to remember their power. And if you're ready for more soul-level clarity, subscribe. We go deep here.